and welcome back to another episode of Four Chicks Chatting. So today we are chatting about one of my most favorite topics. I don't know if topic is the word, but things to do in my professional life and actually my personal life too, and that is conferences. Attending conferences, conventions. I love being around a group of people that are interested in the same thing that I'm interested in, and that I find to be quite the place to be at a conference when it's a topic that I'm trying to learn more about, or as even as a speaker, to be there as one of the people that knows what they're talking about, maybe. But anyway, conferences, getting together with folks that are like-minded, adding to my network, building my tribe, finding people for my team. Oh, it makes me sound like I walk into a room like, all right, what do y'all got for me? Like, here she comes.
Got
But
an
anyway,
entourage.
yeah, so I think that we'll deep dive into what we all get out of conferences. So let's jump right in.
You made a really good point just then, and you
Don't
made a
sound
note.
so
You,
surprised.
I,
You
what?
can't even find them.
What? Kristen made a good point.
Say what now?
What? When you talked about the way you put it, obviously you were joking, saying what's in it for me. But the truth of the matter is, there's a lot in it for you at these events,
Hmm.
and I actually just spoke at one not too long ago, and one of the things that I did beforehand, um, and it's really important to prep for these things. Look up the speakers who are going to be there. Look up the people that you know. Any kind of information that goes out ahead of time about the agenda, about who's going to be there, all that other kind of stuff. Look up those people. And what I did was I always try to connect with them on LinkedIn
Yeah.
beforehand.
Hmm.
Just send a little note saying, hey, we're going to be at the same conference. I'd love to meet up with you. Shall we connect on LinkedIn ahead of time? And I can't tell you how at these events, how many of these people, regardless of where they are in the food chain, above me, below me, in terms of their success, their whatever, come up to you and seek you out and say, hey, thanks for connecting. I just wanted to make sure I said hello. It's a huge opportunity to connect with people that you're just not ordinarily going to have an opportunity to do that with.
It's an
Yeah.
icebreaker too.
Research, yeah, and connect with these people online ahead of time so they kind of know who you are and are on the lookout. And then you just, hey, thanks for connecting with me. I wanted to make sure we said hello. And it's as simple as that, and it opens the door to who knows what down the road.
It also gives you an idea of what they do.
Hmm.
So when you do talk to them, you can have a little more of an intelligent conversation versus just, oh, what do? You can dive a
Yeah,
little deeper.
exactly. Checking these people out ahead of time because the information's there. So take advantage of it and go in informed, having some idea of who you're going to meet and what, as aside from what room do I have to go to
Mhm.
hear what I'm supposed to do? Because that's
It
what
also,
most of us do.
it also gives you an opportunity for collaboration. If you identify who they are and what they do beforehand, and if it's someone that is in a space that's similar to yours or where there could be opportunity, it gives you an opportunity for collaboration or a referral source.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's also, I love, as I've been diving into these social media platforms to see where am I really going to spend my time because I cannot be on all of them. And I've gone back and forth with Twitter of where is the value in my life of spending time. But my biggest thing with Twitter is conferences because the good ones, they use a hashtag for the conference. And then that's how I follow and connect with people for that conference. And honestly, that's why I've gotten a lot of the better sessions, the stuff I'm really interested in, or the presenters that really have given a lot of information. They'll use the hashtag for the conference, or people that follow that person and know the presentation that's coming. They'll put it out there with the hashtag. So you follow the hashtag for it and then connect with all those people. And I've been at conferences where they have tweet ups, a meetup for the people that are on Twitter, and you meet those people somewhere during the conference in real life and then get to see all the people that are on Twitter in real life and meet them and then have connections and collaborations from that point. So that's a really cool way to use Twitter with a conference and build your Twitter
That's
following.
that's a really
Yeah.
good tip. That's a really good tip about the hashtags. That was something I hadn't thought of. But you're right. All the big conferences use a hashtag.
And then one of the things I just did as a speaker this weekend at the big convention sorry, that I was speaking at, I decided on my final slide, I usually put, here's all the ways to connect with me. But I researched this group for months before I went there to see where are they really talking. And they were the only place I could really find them is Twitter and LinkedIn. So my final slide only had my website and my Twitter and LinkedIn. And my LinkedIn is now in 3 days has over 120 some new connections from the folks at that conference, because that's really where they're connecting with people is on LinkedIn. And then we've had all these messages and conversations and potential projects just from sharing my LinkedIn as opposed to my email. Isn't that bizarre?
Wow.
That's another good tip, though.
It's a really good
Yeah.
tip.
Yeah. So, I don't know, conferences for me, I love to, I actually had I think my first ever conference was actually my worst nightmare. I have it in my book where I walked in and it was a conference to learn more about the blindness that we had just been diagnosed with. But I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to know anything about it. But I had to, just by force of nature, that I had to learn more about the disease that we were dealing with. And actually at that conference is where I met one of the most pivotal people in my life. It was a mom that stood up and spoke about raising a blind child. And I got to connect with her only for a few minutes after her speech and talked. And she was a huge pivotal person that then ended up being in my book all these years later. But that really shows the power of conferences. She wasn't even really on the agenda. It was like a side thing that she decided to do for the other parents. And she didn't even get on the stage. She just kind of stood up and was talking with folks. But it was that powerful. Going to a meeting like that was super powerful for me.
I think the other thing too, Kristen, is to always make sure that you have something like a business card or something at the ready to give to people like that, because I ended up, well, people can't see it at the moment, but I literally have a stack of business cards that I got from various conferences and whatnot, and these kinds of things are invaluable in connecting with people, yes, and in researching what they do, and for your own purposes in terms of building lists and all that kind of stuff, which we all know is important to for outreach and everything. But it's so important to have something, because those interactions take place in a very short time frame, and then you're off to the next person. So make sure you have a way to stay connected with that person. Your business card, ask them for a business card so that you can stay in touch, and maybe jot a little note on it as you walk away, like connect or something like that, if it's somebody that really resonates with you.
I write on their card where I met them.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
I'm like, I just met them here, blah, 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 had coffee in the hallway. And that's how I remember the conversation and whatnot to be able to follow up on the plane ride home. Because I lose it that quick.
Follow-up is critical though, Kristen, I think, because you want to stay warm in their mind. So you have to follow up with an email or a connection on social media right away.
Yes.
I use LinkedIn a lot for that. When I meet people, I connect with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I just met you at such and such, and I would love to add you to my network of connections on LinkedIn and stay in touch and add to whatever our conversation was. But Kathy, you and I were at that networking event for the chamber last week where you spoke, and there were a lot of good points made. And I think it was interesting. Well, first I'm going to say the other gentleman that spoke, he actually said, and I've heard this before, where you shouldn't give your business card unless someone asks for it. Like wait until they ask for it. And I thought that was I've heard that before, and it was, Michael Port is where the first time I heard that. So it was many, many years ago, probably like 8 years ago when I first heard him say that. And then the gentleman last week said it as well. And I thought that was interesting, because what both were saying is that we should be listening versus talking when we're networking. So it's not necessarily, if they ask you what you do, yes, that's great. Tell them, of course. But you should be listening more than talking. But Kathy, when you spoke, you talked a lot about the perceptions with networking and how to communicate, and the signs to look for if you're talking to someone, and you mentioned like if you're talking too fast, or if they're talking really fast, or if they're talking really slow, that if you're this type of person, they may not connect with you, and so on and so forth. So I think it would be useful for everybody to kind of hear some of those tips. Obviously, not your entire presentation, but just a couple of little nuggets that could help people when they're networking.
Oh, thanks. Well, everybody grab a coffee or a cocktail because we're going to go through it. Um, the whole idea behind networking, I think, has a bad rap, and maybe it's because it just says you automatically think of a business card exchange, and here's mine, here's yours, and where's the bar? And I think the main goal of networking is really to, well, connect, but to connect to build relationships, and those relationships need to be mutually beneficial, right? So that's really what you want. You want to meet somebody that you can, like Robin said, collaborate with, learn more about. What if you're job seeking? You want to be able to meet people and talk about your skills and are they hiring and things like that. But there's a lot of there's a lot of people that hate these events. I'm not crazy about them either, but I think when you go in, I think it was you, Kristen, or Mary Fran. If there are people there in every networking event, you can see who registers. Now that everything's online, you can just go in and see the people that you want to meet. Send them a LinkedIn request because that's an automatic icebreaker for when you see them. They'll recognize your face, and then you can talk about it. But a lot of the nonverbal cues and clues come out in a networking event. Some of the examples that I did give last week, if you're meeting someone that shakes your hand and is talking pretty much about themselves, and as they're shaking your hand but looking over your shoulder to see who's behind you, that's somebody that is not really listening to you. They are listening to respond, not listening to understand. So kind of know that maybe that person's not the best connection for you. And then conversely, there are a lot of people that go to networking events that, they're someone within their organization sent them to, or a conference they sent them to go learn something, but they really are uncomfortable in that setting. And what happens is your face, your whole demeanor gives you away. And so you walk away like, well, nobody liked me, nobody talked to me, but the vibe you were giving off was you're unapproachable. So keep those things in mind a little bit when you are going to these events. Hook up with that person ahead of time. Don't do
not
the
hook up, but
no. Hook up with them on LinkedIn or any other social site, but also have that not that canned. So what do you do? Ask them questions like, so what brought you to this conference? Or what did you like best about that session?
Yeah.
And have a conversation. And then that's a great segue into, especially if you are looking for a job, that is the best way to find out about somebody's company without saying, so are you hiring? You start saying, what brought you here? Oh, well, my manager suggested that I attend this because we're working on something. Oh, well, that sounds great. Tell me more. And then get them talking. Right. That's kind of what you want. You want to, like you said, Robin, you just want to listen more than talking. So
and go over to tables where you don't know anybody. Just, especially those ones where they have outside a lot of the conference rooms in the networking area, they have the high, what are they? High hats?
High
table?
tops.
High tops.
High tops.
Yeah, high tops, high hats. Come on now. Dun, 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 dun.
Jazz hands.
Yeah. I always walk in, if there's like a little bit of space, I'll walk up and meet new people and I like that, Kath, ask about what did you like about that session? What sessions are you heading to? Those kinds of questions instead of just, what do you do? Yeah. I like that. The other thing that I think one of the biggest ways that I built my network or built my getting my face out there early on, because if you're like I was a few years ago, into a whole new job, a whole new field where I didn't know anybody yet, in those big sessions or even the small ones where they go, are there any questions? I always was the first one at that microphone. Now, I had a question that was very relative that I wanted to ask the speaker, but I wouldn't wait until afterwards and ask the speaker. This took me about a year or two, though, to get up the guts to do it. Stand at that microphone in front of all those people and ask your question and say who you are and ask the question, because most of the time, other people have that question and they're
Yes.
so happy you did it.
Mhm.
And it gets your name out there and your face, and all those people that had the same question would come up and meet me afterwards. I wanted to ask the same thing. Now, how did you handle? And then that's how I started building my network ginormously early on.
You also
Yeah.
have that personality, Kristen,
A little
that
scary though.
you're fueled by the interaction with people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that aren't.
Like me. Like
So-
I absolutely dread going to these things. And if I have to go by myself, I'm physically exhausted.
Sorry,
I'm,
cut out for a minute there.
you know,
It is
I'm like,
exhausting.
I'm miserable. Even the thought of going, I don't want to go. I would so much rather not go. Once I get there, I'm okay, but I am exhausted as soon as I walk out that door. And my time frame is limited. Like after about 30 minutes, I'm spent. I just have to go and and replenish myself somehow, because I'm so spent after all of that. That's the introvert.
I
in
feel
me.
the same exact way, and everybody laughs when I tell them that I am more of an introvert than an extrovert, but it's very true. Because it's to my mind, it's having to be on.
Mm.
You have to be
Yeah.
on. You have to be your persona, whatever that persona is. But I found that if I go into it with kind of a purpose, like okay, I need to meet so and so and so and so and so and so, but then recognize that I'm just going to have a conversation with them. Like recognize that ultimately this is just a couple of humans interacting and having a conversation. It takes a little bit of the sting out of it. So for me, it's kind of a balance of preparation and recognizing that it's just a conversation. Like finding that sweet spot in there somehow, so that I'm not completely depleted by the end of it. But
Right.
I feel the same way. I want to go home. I can't wait to get home and get in my yoga pants when it's done, because I'm just wiped out.
A recommendation that I've made to other introverts like yourselves, especially if this is something that you really, really need to go to because there are certain folks that you want to meet, bring a wingman
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
and have that wingman talk you up so that you don't have to do all of the talking.
Mhm.
You know, I think all of us have done that for each other at various times over the
Mhm.
years. Like have you know, I can remember a couple times, Kristen, you and I were going somewhere, and you're like, "Where are you? I'm dying in here," you know. And I had sent the same texts, because it is better when you have somebody that you're comfortable with who knows you. And
Mhm.
don't we all prefer talking about our friends and how wonderful they are than we do about ourselves? So
Mhm.
you're right, Kath. I think that's a great tip.
Well, they do a better job of explaining what we do than we do.
Mhm.
And telling
Especially if you're
everybody how
nervous.
telling everybody how great you are.
Yeah,
You're not going to go, "I am so amazing, you really need to hire me." But your friends will say, "She is so amazing, you really need to hire her."
right. Just smile and nod. Yeah.
I actually had, when I was out at a conference that I said yes to, this is another thing about saying yes when you can. I said yes to speaking at the last minute. I had to get on a train, go up to Boston last June. It was literally the day before. I said yes, got on the train, did this whole thing as a favor to this woman that I didn't even know. But I knew her reputation was stellar, and I thought, I'm going to help her if I can. Anyway, at the end of that I was on this little panel, and at the end of that, there was a speaker cocktail reception or something. We came out of there, and the woman that organized the whole thing says to this guy, "Oh my God, you have got to hear Kristen Smedley's story. She just wowed that whole room, and it's somebody that you should know." And she went on this whole thing like we had known each other forever, right? Start talking to this guy. That's how I ended up with that Nashville gig, which was 1,000+ people, because one person had said, "Oh my gosh, Kristen Smedley is somebody you need to know." And then there was the connection, and then had this big gig from it. So you never know. Which also, if you are an expert or working on being the expert in your field, apply to conferences to get on a stage to talk about it. And when you're talking about something that you really, really know and it's your thing, then it's not as daunting to be up on that stage talking about it. And you start with something you really know, and then you can grow from there. And growing a network as a speaker is so much faster and more vast of a network than just trying to be in there as an attendee, figuring out who all these people are and having them know you.
And sometimes, Kristen, I think you hit the nail on the head with those panels. Applying to panels, once again, you're surrounded by other people that you can kind of feed off of, and it's not so much that you have to develop a speech or a presentation on your own. When you get an opportunity to be on those kinds of panels, it's a subject matter that you're clearly interested in and passionate about, and you do play off of those other people, and it takes some of the sweat and fear out of it, I think.
Yeah, of course, unless you're invited to one where they're all brilliant makeup people like me last year. And then I was like, how did I end up on this? Wait till they find out that this was the big mistake. I just acted like I had just as much. Actually, I called them all it was at the NIH. It was all these big mucky muck smart people, right? And I was like, hey, I get to the microphone. I go, hey, I was invited to the cool kids lunch table. Hey. And the one real brilliant scientist looked at the person next to him and he goes, I'm at the cool kids lunch table. I'm the cool kid. It was funny.
It's always a fun way to spin stuff like that. Yeah, good for you.
All right, any more? Why don't we wrap it up with a tip or two? Kath, you had quite a bit of nuggets there.
I had some value bombs I was dropping,
You
didn't
did.
I?
You did.
You know, I actually wrote down some of them. I did a before, during, and after. Look at the speakers beforehand on LinkedIn. That was you called it it's a warm intro. Then when they see you, they recognize you. And I had mentioned follow the hashtag before, and you can start the conversation there. And then at the conference, introduce yourself to the speakers. And Kath, you mentioned connect to build relationships, not to just connect.
Yeah.
And then follow up afterwards. I think Robin was talking about follow up afterwards. Mary Fran, what else you want to chime in to wrap it up?
I just think you need, like I said, to go in. You have to go in with a plan, especially if you're not naturally a Kristen Smedley who likes to just go in and say, hey, I'm Kristen Smedley. That's a personality thing that not everybody has, and I don't have it. So I need to kind of go in with a little bit of a plan, but also, again, temper it with the awareness that you're not the only person who's intimidated by this, and you are just having a conversation with people. So that would be my way to approach it, and just make yourself do it because they're so incredibly valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add, because it did come up a couple of times, how it's great to introduce yourself beforehand and connect by LinkedIn so you have that warm connection when you walk into a room. Have a professional headshot so people can recognize you and identify you. And I know everybody gets tired of hearing me say that, but it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, look like yourself. Then they'll know who you are.
And follow up afterwards. That's huge. Whenever I get business cards or whatever, I always send an email to people within the next couple of days. Hey, if they went to a session and they sign up for an email list or whatever, hey, thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. If there are a lot of ways to work with me, if you're interested down the road, blah, blah, blah. Always do that follow up too.
Kath, what you got?
I was going to say, try to listen more than you speak. Don't listen to respond, but listen to understand.
Well, there you go. We're going to end on that one. We're going to end on that one while everyone was listening intently. That wraps up another episode of Four Chicks Chatting. Follow us on that social thing. Hey, let us know what conferences that are your favorites, what you're attending, what you think that the Four Chicks might be interested in attending. I'd love to explore some new conferences.
We love a road show.
Yeah. We are a road show.
Road trip.
Let's take the road show on a road trip. There you go. That would be cool stuff. All right. Connect with us out there, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.